I'm making this video in April 2025, and everyone in the United States is talking about tariffs. I would like to not talk about tariffs because anything I say would probably not be true in a week. Things are changing pretty fast, and anything I say about tariffs or politics would probably just make somebody mad, and that doesn't sound like any fun. So I would like to talk about something somewhat related, which is the topic of buying things made in the USA. And I'm gonna try and say something that will be true for a while, and I'm gonna try and say something that isn't gonna make a whole bunch of people mad. I don't know if I'll succeed, but that's what I'm gonna try and do. So, if I were to give you a tour of my shop, you would find all kinds of things that were made all over the world, everywhere from North America to Europe to Asia and so on. Every one of those purchases was a decision, and I have 3 guidelines that I try to follow when I make those decisions, and I want to share those guidelines with you. The first guideline is I want to care about where I spend my money. Usually that means that I prefer that the money I spend go somewhere closer to me, but not always. And the notion of closer to me isn't always just about geography. Guideline number 2 is I want to control my emotions, not allow them to control me. These kinds of issues are controversial. People get upset about these kinds of things. Sometimes I get upset about these kinds of things. But when it comes to my emotions and how they affect my judgment, I want to keep my hands on the wheel. Guideline number 3 is I want to remember that things are complicated. Whenever I allow myself to believe that things are simpler than they are, that's a sign that I may be trying to deceive myself or maybe allowing myself to be deceived by others. I'm going to grab the camera and walk around my shop and show you a few things and how these guidelines play out for me. This is my table saw. It's a 20-year-old Delta Unisaw, and if I were to buy a table saw today, new, I would have to buy one made in Europe or Asia, and I would be okay with that. But this table saw was made in the United States, and I kind of think of it as special because of that. It's one of the last wave of table saws made in North America. I'm in the process of doing a full tune-up on this saw, and sometimes I call it a makeover because I'm upgrading a number of its components. I've added a new fence from Very Super Cool Tools, a micro adjuster from Canyon Fire Tools, a DRO from Accurate Technology, a new blade guard from Shark Guard, and I've added a new Forest Woodworker 2 blade, which you can't really see in there. All of these items were made by small companies in the United States. That makes them close to me in 2 ways. They're made in the United States and they are made by small companies, and I'm a small business owner myself. So I have a soft spot in my heart for small companies. I've also added the Jessam clear-cut stock guides, and it's not installed yet, but I have a new miter gauge also from Jessam, made in North America, Canada. In general, I've tried to keep my saw North American simply for the sake of tradition. There's a lot of good table saws being made today. They're just not being made in North America. That's how it is. Here's a little more complicated example. A few months back, I bought this combo of a planer and a jointer. These are Oliver. Specifically, these are the new incarnation of Oliver, not the storied American brand from decades past. This is Oliver stuff made in Taiwan. I know there are people who are upset about the fact that Oliver was a classic American-made brand name that is now being used for products made in Asia. Am I thrilled about this? No, I'm not. But if I'm going to stay mad about something that I can't control, I need it to be about something more important than tools. Why did I buy the Oliver brand? Quite simply, these are the items that my local woodworking store carried. Given that most of the jointers and planers made in Taiwan are pretty similar, and this was a way of supporting my local woodworking store, I never seriously considered any other brand. Supporting my local woodworking store is also one of the reasons that I decided to start buying some Festool products. Festool makes good stuff. I like their products. I'm willing to pay a little more to support the store that's near me. At the same time, when it came time to decide to buy an MFT, I did not choose the Made in Germany option. I went with Dashboard. Dashboard, again, I feel good about the fact that it's made in the United States. In fact, it's made in Colorado, which is another state that I have a personal connection to, and it's made by a small business. So Dashboard is close to me in kind of three ways. But I shouldn't ignore the fact that I also chose Dashboard because I think as MFTs go, it's a better product. And that's a factor in my decisions too. I have a few of the red aluminum items from Woodpeckers, made in the United States. I like that too. So far, I guess I probably haven't said very many things that would make a lot of people mad. So now it's time to admit that despite all that I've shown you, it's pretty hard to swing this ruler in here without hitting something from Harbor Freight. The truth is, I got all kinds of stuff in this shop from Harbor Freight and/or made in China. How do I explain that using the guidelines I shared with you earlier? Well, that's why guideline number 3 is, it's complicated. My dust collector, the filter and the cyclone were made in the USA. The core blower, Harbor Freight. It's complicated. In terms of quality, my buying preferences tend towards the Endpoints. I like really nice tools and products, and sometimes I like really cheap tools and products. Here's an example, drill bits. I have a set of very nice brad point drill bits from W.L. Fuller, made in the United States in Rhode Island. These are considered great, and they are. I also have a set of Warrior drill bits from Harbor Freight. Both these sets of drill bits are important to me. Why? Because I need cheap drill bits for situations where I don't want to risk my good ones. The set from W.L. Fuller was pretty expensive. I couldn't buy a hamburger for the price I paid for this set. It would be easier if I could just make quick assumptions about the quality of a product based on where it was made. As I said, these drill bits made in China, they're dreadful, but they're dreadful in a way that I appreciate. These PowerTech rail clamps have been really good. They're very inexpensive. This Milwaukee M12 jigsaw is made in China and it's fantastic. In my experience, some stuff made in China is great and some stuff made in China is lousy. And as far as I can tell, that's true of every country. These 4 products were made in the UK, Germany, Spain, and Austria, and they're all great. In fact, I look around my shop and I can't find anything made in Europe that wasn't awesome. So should I generalize and say that everything made in Europe is great? I think not. Trust me on this. I lived in Europe for a little while as a much younger man. Just like everywhere else, Europe has lousy stuff too. It's just that lousy stuff from Europe is a whole lot more expensive than lousy stuff from Asia, so it's less likely to be brought over here to Illinois where I live. Stepping over to the other side of my shop for a moment, here's my tractor. A John Deere, classic American brand, right? Manufactured in Georgia. Well, that's where it was put together. A whole bunch of the parts were made elsewhere, including, I believe, the engine. It's complicated. Here are 4 Milwaukee products made in 4 different countries: Vietnam, Mexico, China, and Israel. I wish things were simple. I really do. They're just not. Do I sometimes buy products where I appear to care more about my own convenience or the quality of the product more than I care about where the money goes? Yeah, sometimes I do. But that's partly what guidelines 2 and 3 are about. Guideline 2 is about controlling my emotions. Guideline 3 is about remembering that it's complicated. Those 2 guidelines are there to remind myself, don't beat yourself up because guideline 1 doesn't always work perfectly. If I were to paraphrase my 3 guidelines as advice, I would say, care about where your money goes, keep your cool, and give yourself some flexibility for the times when things aren't simple. These seem like good ideas to me. I like my guidelines because they're pretty hard to argue. I mean, you can disagree with any of my specific purchasing decisions, but the guidelines themselves, If you want to argue with those, you might sound kind of silly. I like my guidelines and I recommend them to anyone else, but I do so with no expectation that they would interpret or apply them the same way I do. So my goal here was to say something level-headed without making everybody mad. Did I succeed? Let me know in the comments if you want. Thanks.